Okay, we are in the week of the Torah portion. Please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, hit for the I'm getting tired of this. Hit the notifications, and let's try to bring the membership up. Thank you very much. Portion-Tetzaveh, again, the weekly Torah portion. We are in Portion-Tetzaveh, 464. In this portion, well, you'll see. Right away it says, and I've said this every year, I run this, Tetzaveh Israel, you will command Bnei Israel. Who's the you? Who's you?
Assume he's talking to Moshe.
Moshe. And why is it Moshe's name mentioned?
Ah,
That's the ultimate question.
where did we leave off last week?
We left off last week with he's telling him the whole clay Mishkan. He's explaining the Mishkan.
That's what he's still saying. It's a you.
Right. So you could
Look at
say
every
you could say
section,
simply.
you shall.
Right. You could say simply that is you. We know who he's speaking to. Yet it doesn't. In this whole parsha, Moshe's name is not mentioned. So the reason is, I believe it's the Torah. He says that the reason that Moshe's name is not mentioned is because he said, any problems you have, bring to me. It was a show of arrogance, if you will. So Hashem punishes him. And I'm sorry. He said, if I can't say that the people wipe me out from this book, that's what he said. If I can't say, so since the tzaddik says something, fine. Hashem listens to him, and Hashem doesn't include his name. So, in other words, we're learning from that. The major mussar, the major ethical teaching we learn from that is never say anything that you don't want to happen. So don't say, wipe me out. Don't say, if I'll sell my soul to the devil to get this done. Don't say anything like that.
Not even ingest it.
Don't invoke things that you don't want. So, and even if you do want it, you don't invoke it. When you have so many cases this where Yaakov said to Lavan, if anybody stole your teraphim, they should all be killed. They should be killed. Who stole it? His daughter Rachel, his Yaakov's favorite wife. What happened to Rachel? She dies, all because of Yaakov saying, "The one who has it shall die." Okay, and then you have Reuven. He says to his father, "If I don't bring Binyamin back to you, you can kill my two sons." What happens? He loses two sons. Okay, so you open your mouth is al tiftach peh l'satan. Do not open your mouth to the accuser, the divine accuser. So that's what you really learn from that, and in a very real way, Moshe learned it. Now, if you don't think like that, and again, you just go pshat, so you're simply saying that it's just a continuation. But like I said, everybody does like to pick on that. Why isn't Moshe mentioned? So fine, it says it. So you will command Bnei Israel, and they will take or bring to you pure olive oil, katit lamoor, which is crossed for illumination, halot netamid, to cause the light to go up continually. And so Rashi explains when he says, you shall command the people to bring pure oil, it means beli shemarim, without any leads. You know, the leads, the L-E-E-D-S, any of the dregs of olive oil, because when you press any fruit, you get the pulp.
Okay.
So you don't want the pulp. And she says this oil has to come from this oil, pure oil, what we would call extra virgin olive oil. Okay, so that was without any of these pulp or leaves, whatever you want to call
There
that.
would be no grittiness whatsoever, no little particles in it.
Correct.
It would be totally fine oil.
Correct. So, and that, according to the Gemara Manachot, that comes from the olives at the top of the olive tree, and they're brand new.
Oh, I never thought about this question. When we press olive oil, are we pressing ripe olives or green olives? Anybody ever asked that?
What would be the difference?
Well, the black olive is a ripe olive. From an eating standpoint, I much prefer the black olives, but I'm curious about that. Really.
So I believe it would be they're pressing the black olives. I'm not sure, but it would make sense that they're pressing that.
You know, I would think like any other fruit, you'd have more juice. I use the word in quotes, juice.
So the way they do it is they just do one press. In other words, it's the first press.
Yeah.
And it's just, you let the stuff like this.
You're not really.
No, you're just like this.
Down,
no, not yet. The first press, the oil comes out. That's what you're keeping. Now you press it again. That oil will be used for menachot, for other things, but only the first press.
So that's like an orange. You squeeze an orange very carefully and only get the juice out of it, not all the other.
Correct. So but the second one, when
you really mash it down,
that's when you get in the pulp.
Okay.
So really, that's what we're talking about. Okay, and so he explains the oil in 21:20 in his notes. Says, having completed the commandments regarding the actual construction of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the Torah now turns to those who perform the service within it. It begins by teaching that the oil for the menorah must be absolutely pure, without any without any admixture of foreign substance or even olive sediment. Oh, that's what you call sediment. The requirement of an absolute purity is a fitting preclude to the selection of Aaron and his sons as Kohanim, for they too must remain pure and separate from the rest of the nation, in the sense that they may not permit unauthorized people to take part of the service. Now it says again, and you. So Rashi explains, regarding the commands up till now to build various parts of the tabernacle, Moshe had been instructed to convey the instructions to those who would do the work, but he had no personal involvement in the labor. In the first three commands of this parsha, though, Moshe is told, now you, implying that he was to involve himself personally with these tasks. The three were the preparation of the oil, that was number one. Then number two would be the designation of the Kohanim as Kohanim. And number three, the selection of the wise and talented people who would make the vestments and build the tabernacle. That's according to the Ramban and Sforno. The importance of these three commandments may be that the oil represents the light of wisdom and holiness, illuminating Israel's pursuits. The Kohanim are the living embodiment of our role in the sacred service, and the construction of the tabernacle and the vestments in which the Kohanim serve demonstrate Israel's capacity to elevate human activity to a godly level. So we're seeing that there's a lot that we're learning from the Kohanim, a lot that we're learning from the oil that they're using, a lot that we're learning from their clothing, and it's all to tell us that we're supposed to bring ourselves up from our human activity and bring it to turn our gashmias into ruchnias, as they would say, turn our materialism into spirituality. So if the Kohanim can do it, they're our leaders, they're our teachers, so it should come to us. Okay. And then it says, Vichu elecha, you take it for yourself. Now he says, and this is a problem that people deal with, in the wilderness, oil for the menorah could not be produced in the manner prescribed by the Torah because there were no olive trees were available. Consequently, they had to use the oil that they had prepared in Egypt. Now that's before you were told that you have to prepare pure olive oil. So they, it's like going to the store, buying olive oil. Well, it's not pure. It's olive oil, but it's not pure. So that oil had to be brought to Moshe for his inspection to certify that it was of necessary purity. So they would, I'm not sure how they would have, I guess they filtered it if they had to do that, and they would show Moshe. That's according to Nachmanides. The future tense indicated that oil would have to be brought continuously because the commandment to kindle the menorah was ongoing and not merely during the inauguration ceremonies of the tabernacle. Okay. So then again, going on with this, because it's important to understand how this worked, he says pure crushed, only oil for lighting had to be crushed rather than ground and pressed, because this oil had to be absolutely clear, without any oil particles of sediment. Even though such impurities could be filtered out later on, the sense of the verse is that the oil had to be absolutely clear from the start. Again, how they dealt with that in the wilderness would be a question. Therefore, the oil was made by crushing the olives with a mortar until the first drops of clear oil are extracted. Afterward, the olives could be ground by millstones and the remaining oil used for meal offerings. And continually meant that the menorah had to be lit only from evening until morning, as stated in the next verse, but it was continual in the sense that it was kindled every single day without exception, even on Shabbat. How can you do it? How can you do it on Shabbat? You have to light a candle. We're not allowed to light. So because it's in the temple and it's part of the worship, so that is exempted. So even though we can do the 39 malachot in the temple, That's all you can do it. Or the Mishkan, that's all you could do it. You couldn't do it outside. And that's only when the Mishkan was built. So again, to build the Mishkan, you couldn't break Shabbat. But once it's operational after the year, we have to do things. We have to slaughter animals. We have to give karbanot. We have to do all these things. So we are, since we're commanded to, we're allowed to do it. Only there, only for that. But if a person would go home, and by the way, this is something for all those people in Hatzalah, the Jewish ambulance service on Shabbos, Hatzalah. Okay, so the people on Hatzalah have their, I assume now it's cell phones instead of walkie-talkies, and they have their cars. They drive their car to shul. They're going to shul, but they drive their car to shul. They have their cell phone on, and they get the call. They jump in the car and they go. How can you do that? You're having you have the Shabbos. How can you do that, right? So because we have to save the life, so therefore you are allowed to do those things. But what happens when Mr. Hatzalah is not on that week? Right? He's not on that week. So he's not on duty. Therefore, he can't carry. He's not allowed to carry his cell phone, nor can he drive his car to shul, saying, I may need it. No, you're not on duty. Forget it. So that's the thing. So when I'm on duty, I have to do what I have to do. When I'm not on duty, the commandment suddenly becomes incumbent upon us, which is why I heard, again, I'm never sure about this. I never was part of Hatzalah, but I heard that the Hatzalah groups, they have to continually learn Hilchot Shabbat, so they know what they can and what they cannot do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even though I'm driving the car, I still have to know everything about it.
I even heard over 25 years ago talking about this and doctors that were on call, that not only could they go when called, but they were actually, I'm told back then, to see if you concur, if you that they were allowed to drive to go back to their community.
Absolutely. Oh, wait. Why do they have to go back to the community?
Otherwise, Shabbos is gone for them, basically.
No. So I'm not sure. I never heard that.
No.
What I heard was like this. I had a friend who was, he was during his internship. Guy of Shomer Shabbos. It's the Shomer Shabbos guy, and so he got the call or the whatever it was. It wasn't a 911. It was just a call. So he decided he's going to walk up the stairs.
But he was on call, and
he was in the hospital. He was on call, but it wasn't. It was just I'll walk up the stairs.
He was in the hospital.
Instead of taking the elevator, he decided he'll walk up the stairs. He got yelled at by his supervisor because he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I walked up the stairs." Why would you walk up the stairs? It could have been an emergency. You don't know. Somebody could have died because you want to be religious. Don't ever do that. I'll throw you. And it's from guy. From guy. It wasn't a non-Jew that didn't understand. This is a from guy. He said, if you ever do that again, I will throw you out of the program. You're going to kill somebody because of religiosity.
Wow.
And it's misplaced. And I remember he told me it was, we don't appreciate what we have to do if we're on call, if we are on call. If we're not on call, then you can't do anything. Then you can't say,
it's like the Hatzalah guy, though. He's in shul on
gets
Shabbos,
a call, right?
And he goes, okay, so he drops the guy, picks up the guy and takes him to the hospital.
Right. Then he can come back because he's on call.
This is like the doctor that's still on call. That's, he gets a call. He's at home, but he gets a call.
So again, I'm not sure it may be.
Why would the Hatzalah?
Because Hatzalah is still on call to go somewhere else.
So why?
Where
is that then?
No, because he may have to drive somewhere else. No, the hospital, the Hatzalah, I'm going to the houses. I go from the house
call to a house, right?
To the
and then
place.
you're going to take him to the hospital,
right? So I also need my car because if I get a call, I have to be able to get there. But I'm saying with the doctor, if he's rushing to the hospital because they need him in the hospital, so he's not going to go make house calls.
No. So. But they called him because he's on call, and they call him
right
to the hospital, whatever.
Right.
So that's all the guy. So once he drops his patient off at the emergency room, He should just pull out of the way and stay
That's
there.
a Hatzalah. No, because Hatzalah may be needed again.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if the
dog,
but
he still got his phone though.
yeah, no.
So why
Again,
does he get to go back?
right. So I'm
That's
not
what
arguing.
I'm trying to draw this out.
Again, I'm not arguing on the Hatzalah guy. I'm only asking. I'm not even asking. I'm not even arguing the doctor. I'm asking. Unlike the Hatzalah guy, the emergency ambulance guy, he's constantly driving because people are constantly calling. So he has to be ready to answer that. When I have a doctor who goes to the hospital, so
He's on call with the hospital.
yeah, I understand.
The whole
So
weekend he got called.
I understand. So he's on call at the hospital. So now the question is, why do you have to leave if you're already there? In other words, what would be the advantage? What would be the reason to go back home? Just to enjoy Shabbos?
Because he's on call at the hospital, you're saying.
Right.
I don't know. That's the way I remember
Right.
it. I heard
Again,
that.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Because
I'm
maybe
asking
the
you the
doctor
question.
maybe they won't want to ever take it on call then.
You don't have a choice.
You know.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. I know doctors
He
who
could be a
were on
private
call.
practice, on private practice, and he's leaving himself on call. Maybe every weekend. Who knows?
It could be, but like I said, I know people who've done it, but it's whoever on call. But I never asked if they went home.
Yeah.
So that would be the question. You have to ask, do you go home? If so, what was the heter? See, I never looked at I like that. The Hatzalah guy is clear to me.
So there's something maybe out there.
It could be. It could be. Again, I'm not saying it's
That's-
wrong.
yeah.
I'm saying I don't understand it.
And this was mentioned by a rabbi to me a long time ago.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
It could be that he's correct and that the guy can go home again because he came in, he did what he had to do, and that's it. But it's not. It wouldn't be because they're afraid of him quitting his profession. I won't do weekends anymore. You can't not do weekends. What I have heard some doctors do is they never want to deal with Shabbos, so they always take Sunday and their partner.
Oh, that's ideal.
Right, partner always takes that, so they switch off, and that's all.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, you don't always get that option.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, that's what we're dealing with here. When you have to deal with in the temple, when you have to break Shabbos. So again, when I'm in the temple, when I'm in the tabernacle, when I'm doing the service, I have to break Shabbos because that's the commandment. So, when I go home, I no longer can do anything that I was doing there. I can't say, I used to light. I remember the good old days when I would make my barbecue. So
in this case, in an emergency medical, even somebody at home, and it's Shabbos, and you need to call the doctor, an emergency hospital. But that's not. Tell me if I'm interpreting correctly. That's not breaking Shabbos, but you're commanded to save that life.
Right.
So it's a higher priority.
When I had to jump in the car, I jumped in the car.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I remember I had to jump in the car, and it was emergency case, so I drove my son to the hospital, and then he was released, and he was a little child, and I got back in the car, drove him. I had to pick up medicine for him, so I had to stop at the what do you call it? Pharmacy. Had to use my charge card. I had to do everything. I get back to my house. I turned the car off, and I said to my son, because he was a young kid, I said, "Do me a favor, shut the door." So, and I went back to Shabbos. So, okay, I left the keys in the car. I didn't leave it on because that would have been another danger. Okay, so what happened? Somebody yelled at me. "Why'd you drive back?" I said, "What should I do? What should I do?" My little kid, I have hours. Literally, it was summertime. Literally hours. I was in the hospital from 3 a.m. till they finally released around 12, and Shabbos wouldn't end till 9, and they wouldn't let me. They're not going to have me stay in the room. It's an emergency room. So so I'm released. I said, "What would you have me do? Make my son walk back 3 hours through Tchum, everything else? He didn't do anything." So, but you should have asked a Shaila. I should call the rabbi up on Shabbos. I'll even pick up the telephone. I call me crazy. And besides that, I am a rav, so I made a decision. But see, that's what I'm saying. People like to second guess after the event. But yes, certainly if there's an emergency, then you have to deal with the emergency. And if that means having to drive back, because it even happened here, by the way. My mother was alive. She hurt herself and she was bleeding. So I had to bring her to the emergency room. It was Pesach. And the second Seder. I had to bring her to emergency room. She got stitched up. I'm going to tell my mother, 89 years old, you have to walk back with me. Not happening. Okay, and she was released. So once again, and it's at night, put her in the car. Let's go. Let's go home. I left everything in the car again. Leave me alone. Nothing to do with me. And I went back to Yom Tov.
Yeah.
People can condemn all they want, but you do what you have to do. And so you could have said, you should call the ambulance. Well, my nafkamina at that point. I still have to get her home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not going to do anything. But that's what and on top of that, you're not going to pull an ambulance for that sort of thing. You just get it in the car and because it's pikuach nefesh. So it's my mitzvah to save somebody, not to have a goy come. And how do I know it's a goy driving? By the way, it could have been a Jew driving. So who normally drives? So you don't know that. But that would be again what you're looking at. So the first thing you have to know is in this case is pikuach nefesh is a mitzvah being to save a person. It's a mitzvah. It's not a reshus. It's not a permission. It's a mitzvah that if I see something happen, I have to help that person. So and again, that means getting in the car. So like I said, when it comes the other way, let's say I drop somebody off who's not related to me, okay, and I'm not Hatzalah. I'm not Hatzalah. I saw something, and somebody needed to get me in there, and I dropped them off. So I may have to leave my car there and walk back. I know for me, I'd have to do that. If it's just me, I can't. It's like leaving the Mishkan. I can't break Shabbos because I was working. I have to keep Shabbos now. So that's why when people, if their wife is in the hospital and they get the baby, they have a baby and they want to come back home, you have to walk. You got to stick around the hospital till Shabbos is over. That's the only choice. You can't say, well, I have to get home because I want to have Shabbos meal. I want to make Kiddush. That's not an excuse. So you hear what I'm saying? So that's not, again, with the doctor, maybe there is a reason that the doctor would have to go home. I'm not sure. Okay. Let's go on. So now if we continue that. It says, Ba'al Mo'ed, in the tent of the meeting, Michutz Baruch and outside the Baruch of the Shala Edut, we're in the second verse. That is outside the petition, which that is the, what is it called? Near the testimonial tablets, fine. Yaruch to Aaron of Anab Me'er V'Boket. So again, Aaron and his sons will set up the menorah from morning till night, lifnei Hashem, before Hashem, everlasting statue, made Bnei Yisrael for the generations for the Bnei Yisrael. And what we learn here is that when it says Lahalot Nir Tamid, from the previous pasuk, Rashi says that when he lights it, he has to light the candle until it will remain lit on its own. Okay, and by the way, I brought this up 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was. Rabbi Hirsch has a very nice statement on that, and where he says that is the role of the teacher, to make the student independent and not reliant upon the teacher, or for the rabbi to make the people independent, and they don't have to rely upon the rabbi for certain things. Okay, everything is, that people actually let the rabbi do it, but it's you really want to make people independent. So that's what we're learning from this, where he has to light the candle so it goes up. Okay, the light goes up, and so, by the way, you could also say that a person hasn't done their job educationally until they light the fire under that person that they want to actually go out and learn it or actually do it. Okay, you could go. That's how far you could go with Rabbi Hirsch's statement. So it says again, Atah Crave. Now we're on chapter 28. We're moving here. Went from 27 to 28. Okay. Atah Crave Elecha El Aaron and Aaron Achicha. So you're supposed to bring. You will bring near to yourself Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him. Mitoch Bnei Israel, from Mitzvah Bnei Israel. The Chahanolit, in order to serve me. Kohen is the word Kohen. Or chayin is actually to administer, to serve before Hashem. Okay, so he says, how does he say it? He says to minister. Fine. So Aaron, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, V'itama ben Aaron. So you have Aaron and his 4 sons, Nadav and Avihu, who of course will die in a couple of parshiot. Actually, next book, and then during the inauguration, and then Elazar and Itah, who will live. And they are the children of Aaron, and so it says Rashi says, when will you bring these people? After you complete the works of the Mishkan. In other words, you can't inaugurate Aaron and his sons until the Mishkan is built. So it's going to take a year for them to be inaugurated. Okay? So that, but we're just getting everything ready. And then it says, and you will make the holy clothes for your brother, Aaron your brother, for the glory and the splendor. When your people are supposed to look at these clothes, they're supposed to be impressed by it. And Raj, he explains down here, the vestments were to honor the Kohanim, for these garments were similar to the garb of the royalty. According to Sforno, the vestments were for the glory of God and to lend splendor to the Kohen Gadol as the teacher of the nation, so that he would be revered by the tribes whose names he bore on his breast and shoulders. Glory accrues to a person even because of God-given abilities, while splendor refers to the regard he has earned through his own accomplishments. The vestments signified both the glory that was due to Kohanim as a result of their appointment as ministers of the tabernacle service, and the spiritual splendor that would result from their own efforts. Okay? So then it says, continuing on, V'yata, and you, again, you Moshe, you're going to speak to all people who are of a wise heart. In other words, they know how to do this. And by the way, you have the question, how did slaves know how to do this? How they could work with gold? When you work in the coal mines, if you will, if you're working on the mud, your hands get fat because they're swelling up from all that work. Unlike a person who's working in an office, or me. I don't, thank God I don't have my father's hands. My father's hands were like gloves compared to me, because he was constantly cutting the meat and everything else. Fine. So me, I'm a rabbi. So I have, as my father would say, you have office hands. Okay, they're delicate. And I can do even now, I can still do fine things, whatever I have to do. So you can still get that done. And so, but the question is, they were all slaves. They were all working. Yeah. So and on top of that, you don't have training. If I don't know how to manipulate gold, so how are you going to do it? Okay, so those are all the questions you have. And so Rashi said, Arshko says, Moshe himself was to speak to the artisans because only he could evaluate them to know who had been endowed with God-given wisdom, as prescribed by the verse. Indeed, the wisdom and spiritual attainments of the artisans were thanks to Moshe, for his own exalted nature had filtered down to the people. Bottom line is Ramban is holding that it was miraculous that they would have this sort of thing. And that's why it's Chochmei Lev. Hashem would have to inspire them to give them that knowledge, how to understand what was being done, and also how to do it, and to have the fine motor skills.
The ones who happen to have an aptitude for that thing, maybe they just learn by doing somehow.
Right. Well, however they're going to do it, he's going to show them. But the point is, they'll get those fine motor skills. It's like I said, many people pick on that because they say it's nearly impossible that you can go from one to the other. But nonetheless, that is what's happening. It's always better to know the question. So when people ask, you can say, "Oh," so people comment like this. Okay.
You ever go to a dentist who have a big, large guy and happen to have big, fat hands and wonder how he does that?
Hopefully, he doesn't do it on me. But again, those are the things. Or whenever you see something that's strange, you have to figure out, well, how did you do that? But they trained themselves. They trained themselves. Okay, but that's also, it's not only training yourself, but it's also God giving you the ability to do that. And again, that's what Ramban is basing his statement on, that Hashem gave them this ability to do it. Okay. So he has to speak to the people of Chochmei Lev, Shemaletim Ruach Chochma, that was filled with the spirit of wisdom. Va'asu, and they will make a big day Aaron the Kadsho Lechanoli, to make the clothes for Aaron, to make him holy, so he will serve me. And so Rashi says the Kadsho, what does it mean to make him holy? That the way he's going to become a Kohen is through these clothes that he will serve me. And that's what Rashi says, Kahuna, whenever you see the word kahuna, it's a service. So these clothes, the expression is the clothes makes the man.
Yeah.
Okay, so if Aaron and his sons did not, and ultimately all the way down, would not wear the appropriate garments when they're performing the service would be considered batel. Okay, it would be considered spoiled, and that's why you need the uniform. The uniform is what the uniform makes you. Without that uniform, you're just a regular guy. Okay. And by the way, you're also obligated to die by God. God doesn't like it. He gave you things to do. Okay, so you shouldn't fool around with that. And okay, again, he gives a long note, but I'll skip that right now. So it's the Begadim, and these are the garments Asher Yasu that they will make. The Choshen, which is going to be the breastplate, the ephod, which is the belt of the sword, how they attach it. Me'il is the coat. Chetona tashbetz, and that he says a box-like knit. A tunic of box-like knit. Sorry. And mitznefet is the turban, and the avned is the sash. The asubi, the kosh will make, and they will make the holy clothes. The Aaron achicha for Aaron your brother, ulefanav, and for his sons. The chanoli against to serve me. Vehem yechod zahab. They will take the gold, and the techelet. Yet Argamon and the blue dye or blue purple dye, how do they say it here? Turquoise.
Oh.
We had Argamon and the purple. We had Tolat Shani and the scarlet. We had Ashesh and the linen.
Techelis, they're calling turquoise.
Turquoise. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so that's. Do we ever know, because you talk about the tzitzis with
right.
And again, this is over 20 years ago after I went to Chicago. A guy, the American guy who had made Aliyah, and we got involved in this with finding the right shellfish, whatever it was. I saw he came and he gave a demonstration to the minion one evening, and his techelis became a light blue after exposing to the sun, whatever it was. They do it, but yet now it seems to be more predominantly you see dark blue. You know, have you noticed that people are wearing techelet? You see the dark blue.
Right. So, well, it's supposed to be when you look at the techelet that you see that it should remind you of the sky, the blueness of the sky, which will bring you to think of the Kisya Kavod, the God's throne, and that you do teshuvah. Okay. So that is what I believe Rashi says that in Portion-Tetzaveh. I believe it's Rashi. Either that or Ramban. I forget who it was. But one of them says. The point is that whatever indigo looks like.
Indigo, yeah.
Right. Whatever indigo looks like, whatever that color, that bluish tinges, is the same color apparently as techelet, which is what the rabbis were concerned with. Because indigo is very cheap.
So indigo is made from a vegetable,
right? So it's very cheap apparently.
Yeah.
And it's very common, and but the techelet was not.
Got it the right.
Okay,
shellfish.
so you have to write whatever it was, right? Whatever this thing was.
to get the ink out of the thing.
Whatever, right? So now what happens is that's why some people knew it, some people didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it was known in the Talmudic times, or at least before, certainly Mishnaic times, and then, but still, people were giving forgeries of techelet, which was a problem, and so.
You mean even when we had the tradition?
Yeah.
Oh.
Again, because it's indigo and I could get it cheap. It's like kosher meat. It's like kosher meat, you know. There's always somebody who's trying to rip off the system.
Yeah.
So they gave ways to recognize it. Ultimately, that got lost. And then in I think the 1800s, and that's when I think 1800s is when somebody said they've rediscovered.
Yeah.
And then
maybe the later 1800s.
Then there was a question. and so on and so forth to this very day.
Right.
So most people today say that the techelet is real techelet, the one when they wear it on their tzitzis. They will say they certify this is techelet, and they say. So then the question becomes, and for the rest of the world, well, why aren't we all doing it? If everybody agrees that that's techelet,
don't really know because we lost that menorah, but
Right.
really.
Correct.
I remember reading, maybe the guy was telling us this long ago, that at excavations at Masada, that they found these shells from the shellfish, and then they tried to figure out what this is, and does this shellfish still exist today?
Right.
And that's how they came down to.
By the way, the one thing you have to think of is the Gemara says, I believe it's the Gemara, that if I put on just white tzitzis and I don't put on the blue, because I don't know it, or so you've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Done really nothing wrong. On the other hand, if I put blue on that, which is not techeles, I've transgressed a biblical injunction. So the question is, do you want to get into that argument or do you not?
Somebody told me just the opposite, but I don't think it was an authoritative statement.
We'll have to talk about that.
That